This is the Door Knocker Podcast, where we dive into the explosive growth of the sales industry. We take an in-depth look with the industry's top talent to uncover what has made them successful as salespeople, leaders, and entrepreneurs. We believe all of life's opportunities are just behind the next door. With that being said, opportunities knocking. I'm your host, Zach Ross. All right, guys. We have a guest here who was recommended by Bodie on a recent podcast, Troy. Troy, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself to us?
Well, first off, that's amazing that Bodie actually recommended me to be on here. We've butted heads a lot. Thank you for having me on. I hope I can bring some sort of excitement and maybe a few little things that guys haven't thought about that have been in the industry or not in the industry that are just kind of hopefully, helping people along life's journey that we have. But my name's Troy Goeckeritz. I started in door-to-door 2008. Before that, I was in real estate. I was a realtor. I was one of the top salesmen at Richmond American Homes in 2006 and 2007. And if you know kind of what was happening at the end of 2007, I kind of recognized a little bit of a downturn in the housing market. And when I came into Vivint and talked to Bodie about, coming over, and one of my good friends, Reno Mendenhall, was actually going to go out and sell for Vivint as well. It was weird because I was leaving a job where I'd made $300,000 the year before and wanted to go out and start completely over as just a rep in door-to-door. And obviously it was Apex Alarm back then, and we were selling alarms, and we picked an area down in Texas, Port Arthur, Texas, Beaumont, Texas. If you know that area, that was my stomping grounds as a young buck in this industry. And so that was 2008 was my very first year. And it was a very small office that we went to. It was me and Reno, one of our other buddies, and then like 2 or 3 other guys. So we didn't have a giant office. We didn't have a lot of training and whatnot. And wanted to kind of even back up a little bit, Zach. I know we're kind of going to get into my story, and I don't know how much you want me to just kind of share right through, and I'll just kind of catch you up, and then we can kind of talk from there. But once I switched over from real estate to alarms, it took me, actually I went to Arizona, and for a month straight I didn't sell. Didn't even come close to a sell. I remember being down in Arizona, calling my wife and literally saying, I think I made a huge mistake. And in her wisdom, it wasn't, oh, well then come back and we'll get your old job back. It was figure it out. Yeah. And that was kind of the first time I would say in my life that I literally just had to go figure it out. I feel like I was a pretty natural, I was a pretty natural athlete in high school and played baseball in college. And I felt like things came easily to me. And then real estate was real easy for me. Selling homes just was a natural, easy thing for me. And when I went into door-to-door, I don't know what happened, but for a month straight, it just did not jive. I had knocked door after door after door, and you go from making 300 grand to zero, and your first month even more zero, in the negative, because you're down there spending money on hotels and this and that. And I was in a neighborhood off of Camelback Road in Arizona. I still remember this like yesterday, and still had not made a sale, and had gotten my like 500th rejection of the day. I don't even know how many rejections, but I was walking out of a neighborhood, and a guy yelled from across the street on his front yard and said, "Hey, you, get over here." So I walked over there, and he's like, "Where were you 10 minutes ago?" And I'm like, "I was down there talking to a guy." "Why, what's up?" He's like, "My house just got broke into 10 minutes ago." He's like, "It had to have been 10 minutes ago. I just got home.
No way.
Everything was fine." Like, it was crazy. somebody had kicked in his door, ripped off all of his flat screens, taken all of his computers.
Wow.
And he's like, so what are you doing? And I'm like, literally, this was my pitch back, no joke. I'm like, I am selling alarms. At that point, I had like reached a very, very low point. And I literally just laid it out there. Well, I'm selling alarms. He's like, well, I guess I need one. And so I proceeded to fill out the alarm contract at the same time as the policeman was filling out the police report. So we were both sitting at the table. I still remember it. My very first sale, the policeman would ask a question, then I'd ask a question. The policeman would ask a question, I'd ask a question. And that's how I got my very first alarm sale. And it was about a month in. And then I sold maybe one or two more before we took off to Texas. And we hit Texas, and I had a couple of really good people that were kind of helping me along the way. Casey Bob was one. Bodie was huge. The reason why I went and learned from Bodie was he was the best in the industry. So I wanted to be the best. I wanted to learn from the best. And after kind of getting a few tips from him, went on and sold 315 in 18 weeks in my first summer. So it was a huge turning point. And I think that was the all-time rookie record. I don't know if it still stands at Vivint, but at the time and for many years after, it was the all-time first-year record. As I pursued, going into management, we went in, I co-managed with Reno. We managed together some of the top offices, got into the top 3 at Vivint pretty quickly with him selling 300 plus. He sold 300 that year too as a rookie. So we were both rookies selling over 300 accounts, and then we went into management together. And it was a pretty dynamic duo for a while. We had some top offices. We really did well in that in Vivint as co-managers. And then Reno actually transitioned out and went into solar, and that's when I kind of took off and became a regional VP over at Vivint. It took me from year 6 to 8. I was a regional VP, but the year before I became a regional, I actually sold 409 in 18 weeks, which was the all-time record. That was Bodie held the previous record at 365. And I blew by that about the first part of July, middle of July. And he called me and was like, holy smokes, dude, like that's crazy. So I sold 115 in May, which I think is the all-time record in a month, that first month. And it was nonstop that year. So in Wyoming of all places, it wasn't like, a downtown. It was drive ups, mostly people out in Wyoming. And so, yeah, that was cool. So that's kind of the Vivint story. It was really a testament to me that I stuck with it for that first month. Part was pride. The other part was my wife literally wouldn't have taken me back if I would have not quit. And but it really helped as I started managing and I started talking to a lot of rookies, and we started bringing on people that as you transition into this industry, it's an industry in its own. Like it's just different than everything else you've done. And the skill set that you actually acquire in this industry is unmatched. You obviously can make a lot of money, but the skill set, the comfort level that you have in being in uncomfortable situations, that bubble just goes away, that comfort bubble. And I think that's really important. If people want to be successful outside of that industry, being in the industry is like unbelievably important to learn.
Wow. Yeah, that's a killer nugget, dude. And I want to get back to that in a minute, but I have to go all the way back because what I've found and I've been fortunate to interview, I don't know, I mean, I think some of the, if not the best to ever do it, the most revolutionary people. So what I've found is their childhood is their biggest makeup. So kind of I want to go all the way back. Where did you grow up? What was that like? Did you play sports, anything like that? Kind of like, what was your childhood like?
So if I tell you this, we can't get off the tangent on my dad, because every time I bring up my childhood, everybody wants to talk about my dad, and he's a stud. So my dad was an immigrant. He actually escaped from Germany when he was 16 and came to America. That's a whole nother story, but yeah, legit, under the Nazi regime,
Oh,
slid
wow.
out of there and came to America. And then, my childhood was watching my dad become a self-made businessman in a new country, starting from zero scratch to, building a life that supported 8 kids. And by all means, we weren't mega wealthy. We lived in a little town called Alpine, Utah. That's where I grew up. It was when I was born, when I was little, it was still a lot of dirt roads back here, and it was a small town. And we learned how to work. We had a lot of animals. We had buffalo, horses, pigs, turkeys, and my dad loved that setting of kind of a farm mentality. And so we worked. We had jobs we had to do every day. If I wanted to go skiing with my friends, I had to go clean all the stalls. If I wanted to go do this, I had to go do, something to get the money to do that. And that was super valuable to me. You look back and how I was so, as a kid, you're just begrudgingly doing your jobs. But I look back at that, and my dad really taught me how to work. And there was no getting out of it. It wasn't, hey, I'm not going to do that. It was, you get your butt out of bed and you get your jobs done. And by the time I get home, this and this and this better be done. And if it's not, there's going to be, payment on, and it wasn't in the form of money. Let's just put it that way. But
Yeah.
that was a big deal. So that was my childhood. I played all sports growing up: baseball, basketball, football, tennis, and ended up going and playing baseball and basketball in high school, and then played baseball in college, through my college years. And so, yeah, I mean, sports was a big deal. Competitiveness is a big deal to me. I'm always competitive against the next guy.
Where'd you play ball?
Played at UVU.
UVU, cool.
Yeah.
Was Todd doing like his thing down there when you were in college? Is that way before Todd? Was he
No,
going down
he
there and giving his
was.
talks? And
Yeah.
did you ever catch a Todd Peterson talk when you were at UVU? Or
Actually, funny side note, the way that I made money to pay for my rent and my cell phone bill was beating Todd and Bodie and Lane Thompson in ping pong on a weekly basis. So we had weekly setups. I would go in there and I would literally it was like $100 a game against Todd, Bodie, Lane, and I would just reel off ping pong games. That's how I paid for a lot of stuff in college, was those guys.
that's tight. Okay. All right. So how'd you meet them originally then? How did you get introduced to Bodie and Todd?
It was interesting. Lane Thompson, I met him at UVU. I don't know how, if we had a class together or something. And it was literally, hey, come play ping pong. Like, we played ping pong at UVU, and I was a decent ping pong player from my tennis days. And anyway, I literally knew all the Vivint guys for years before I ever went out. I mean, I knew those guys. I knew Bodie from, like I said, playing over there and hanging out. They would recruit me. I'd tell them no, mainly because I was in baseball during summer, and that was kind of my life, and I wanted to pursue that. And then once I got out of baseball, I got into real estate, and real estate was crazy. I mean, I was printing money, back then. We were selling anywhere from 11 to 20 houses a week. And so I was like, guys, I sit in an air-conditioned office. I make crazy money. Like, what are you, So it was them continuing to recruit me and me continuing to say no. And finally, that started like 2002, and then 2008 was my first summer. So 7 years of them recruiting me to go out to finally. So kind of another lesson is, some of the guys that might be heavy hitters, they take a little while I mean, I look back at that, and Bodie knew I probably had the skill set to be really good. And it just took time for me to come, around to the idea. And so I was older. I wasn't like an 18-year-old kid. I was 26, 27 when I started into door to door. So if you think that it's just for those young dudes, like there's a lot of guys out there right now that are older, more established, that are now looking into door to door as a way of income, for sure.
Yeah. I'm 31. I mean, I started when I was 30. So, I mean, I did a stint, I had this year and a half of like being partnered in a roofing company in Charleston, South Carolina that like, made me feel like I knew how to do this until like, and I've told the story plenty of times on the podcast, but yeah, so I'm right there with you, man. I still, I even looked at Lee the other day because my ego didn't want to admit that like, oh, this is my rookie season. Like my ego didn't want to like, I'm 31, I've made money. Look at me and like, yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, Lee was 40 when he hit Doris, right? So Lee, Mike O'Donnell in Arizona was gray haired. So he was older, so yeah, I get that, and that Casey did say something, and I'd like to really harp on this right now of like, on his podcast, like when life changes your perspective, the door changes, right? So when things happen around you, think your perspective on doors change. And, so you're talking about the market crashing. You had a little bit of foresight on that apparently, right? So was that the direct reason as to why you went to Bodie and said, I want to knock doors now? Was it, what kind of,
honestly, not, yeah, I guess a little bit. I mean, I could have stayed and weathered the storm. I mean, I was doing well. It might have dropped me to 150 grand or, something around there, but I could have weathered the storm. I guess my mentality has always been, when you get to a certain level and you want to get even farther, you've got to give up to go up. And what I meant by that is I felt like I had sold the very most you possibly could in a very good market and topped out at 300 grand. If you want to make 600 grand, going to a job that you are topping out as the top salesman at 300 is not going to get you to 600. And for me, that was the mentality was, all right, I got to give this up to go to the next level. And I felt like picking the vehicle of door to door was that next level. And it did, it ended up getting me to that and beyond. There were multiple years where I made 7 figures in door to door just because it was the right vehicle for me.
10-4. So I will touch on your father, and if we get stuck there, I'm not mad about it. The reason I am is because like, so my mother's an immigrant. She immigrated here from Germany. She immigrated later. She immigrated like in the 70s. But my grandmother on my dad's side, my stepdad's side, was a Jew in the Holocaust. And, I grew up with her. She passed away about 2.5 years ago. But I grew up with her talking about Kristallnacht, and, she escaped Nazi Germany when she was 12. I did a full like 7th grade report project on her whole life because I was just, she would tell that, and I'm, again, your dad has probably the same. I mean, it's just the most incredible stories that you can't even begin to articulate. And she used to always joke. She'd say, Zach, because I was the most book smart kid in the family, but I was absolutely the most socially challenged, right? Like I was a lunatic. But she would always say, Zach, it's funny that a German woman came to America. They emigrated to St. Paul, Minnesota. And so, before they went to LA, she said, Zach, it was funny because in high school, I was the salutatorian number 2 in my class and I didn't even speak English, right? When she graduated high school. So we used to always call her grammar instead of grandma because she'd always correct our punctuation and our grammar when we talked and spoke and stuff. And so that really like, she was a force. And my grandfather was he was a Jewish Russian. And so that it wasn't really prevalent in our family growing up. They kind of, left the church and, but it just, I talked to a lot of these guys, Bodie and Casey and Kenny, and it's the farm. Obviously you guys are Utah, it's the farm. I mean, it just makes sense because a lot of you guys grew up on a farm, but that work ethic, man, because what I hear you talking, it's like, you had in the beginning, you have this no quit attitude. Yeah. Right. Like I'm not going to quit. And I'm always curious, is that something that your dad instilled in you? Like, what kind of support did he give you, even with all these ventures? Like, where was he at throughout all this stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the kind of the end of that story. My dad ended up being a Volkswagen mechanic and running his own Volkswagen repair shop. So it wasn't like this fairy tale ending of like he made billions of dollars. Like he literally he worked really hard for his money. We had 8 kids in my family, 6 boys, 2 girls. The boys were all stacked in the middle. So we were always fighting and, doing sports and playing and competing against each other. But, ultimately my dad wasn't even really, he was an okay athlete. He played tennis and he kicked the soccer ball around with us, but he wasn't really like that athletically inclined. But his work ethic at work is what taught us to be amazing. The dude got up at 5 o'clock every morning. He was on the road at 5:30. He was home at 6:30. He trained horses. He spent time with his kids. I mean, the dude was as legit as it comes in just planning his time, being active, and doing what's most important all the time. So I would say, looking back at that was, again, it wasn't the money. I've said this to my dad, like, Dad, I would love to come to you for business advice, but again, like he probably, and he would tell you this, I'm just not the most smartest businessman. I was a mechanic. Like I worked with my hands all my life. So, but his work ethic was just unmatched. And so when I grew up and watched that and was around that constantly, it just had to rub off. I mean, it did.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like even my own mother listens to the podcast now and she's 60. I mean, I'm not going to give her age. She's 12, but my mom's a little bit older and she, and there's actually an audience of a couple of older people that listen to every episode that are like getting a lot out of what you guys are talking about. So it's pretty crazy, like just the ripple effect of it. And I can really respect, because my grandfather, my uncle instilled the same kind of mentality, in us. Yeah. And I didn't even, my mother too, I mean, extremely strong work ethic, made some decisions that kind of changed that position. But for a long time, like she was never home, traveling, selling and stuff like that. So a lot of times I can attribute like even my, still early days of selling for me, but even that little knack that I have, somewhat of a God-given talent for it to my parents. So I do want to discuss this because I made a note. So when you sold that first deal of the guy that walked outside, you've been bagling for a month. Was that in Utah?
I was in Arizona. I went down to Arizona for a month because it was so cold in Utah. We decided to go. Me and actually I rode down there with Casey Baugh. It was one of his first trips and one of my first trips together. We were down there together.
Wait, hold on. Was that when he was sleeping on the mattress?
Yeah.
Oh, so you were at that house with him?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
We were in some dire straits down there.
That's crazy. So you two like literally, so he did the satellite company he was working for goes out of business. He doesn't get paid.
Yep.
He then gets put on Vivint. He tells his wife, I'm going to go down to Arizona. And I think he needed to sell 8 jobs in a month to pay their bills. So he knew exactly what he needed to sell. I think he left $1 million a year deal to go knock. And then you, at the same exact time, it's kind of serendipitous, leave a $300,000 gig and go down there. So what was it kind of like in the beginning with him? Because he seemed to do pretty well in the beginning. In that first month, obviously he paid his bills. So like what was that like for you two together?
It was good. It was a lot, like Nick Elison, I remember, was down there. There was a few other guys down there, and it was all of us were still trying to figure it out. And I don't remember a lot of I remember spending a lot of time at the house studying rather than, socializing. So I was sitting in the corner, really studying. I mean, we had manuals back then. Like I remember flipping through the manual, going over objections, this, that, the other, so I don't remember a lot about kind of what the house situation was. I remember we were all sleeping on blow-up mattresses. It was unbelievable. But I mean, it was eat, sleep, and sell. Like that's what for me, what was most important. And I was there on a mission to be able to figure this thing out before the summer started. And so I remember obviously talking to those guys and having good conversations, and Casey and those guys were having success. So it helped me kind of get through the days that I wasn't. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, that's kind of where it all started.
That's so tight. That's so tight. So you sell your first job to this guy. Do you sell any more kind of in that neighborhood after that? Do you kind of put any more deals together, or do you go straight from that one deal to Texas?
So actually sold that deal on a Thursday, bageled Friday, sold 2 on Saturday, and then went home. And sold in Utah a couple times, and actually had a really, really, it's crazy. Like thinking back, like a really teaching moment on the doors in Utah. And I tell this story all the time when I talk to new reps, because this is such a common mistake. So we were knocking in Utah, knocked on a door, actually was walking up the door with Reno, one of my best friends. Like I was saying, we were knocking together in Utah, and this guy was a hunter. I remember seeing his big truck in the driveway, heads in his garage. I'm like, oh, Reno, like step aside. You're not a hunter. This is my guy. Like I've got this. This is pretty much a dead red sale. We walk up there. The guy literally looks at me. What the do you want? Ice freeze. Reno looks at me. I'm like, absolutely nothing, sir. I am so sorry for your time. Didn't even get like even a remote pitch out. It was so like, oh, I was so caught off guard with him coming. I thought we were going to be best buds. Anyway, we walked away, and like Reno is just giving it to me, just absolutely like, oh, that you guys are definitely best friends. Like you guys are like, are you calling him later? Just going nuts, like just like reaming me. And I was so mad and fuming, and I just sat there with my head down, and Reno, started pitching the next door. We get in. I'm still fuming. Reno's pitching the next sale. Like all of a sudden we get to a point where she's doing the welcome call. She's done. We're walking out of the house, and it like dawns on me, like, what if I was knocking this street by myself and I let that guy dictate the sheer fact that what would I have done on this next door? I would have probably missed this sale because I was so upset.
Wow.
It was an awesome teaching moment in preparation for what is to come, and the fear of failure, and taking things personally. I think that a lot of young reps and people in this industry and in the world, we take things so personally. We don't know what that person went through. We have no idea where that guy has been that day, if he got let go from his job and he's just upset. And we let that dictate what happens on the next door. And you never know what the next door is going to bring. And so that was a huge, huge takeaway for me on that street. And I remember specifically telling myself, never again will I allow somebody to dictate my mood and what I do on the next door by how they treat me on the previous door. And that has been probably one of the greatest things to my success, is making sure you leave whatever happened on the last door. Take the next door as exactly what it is, the next door.
Yeah, Pat Mendez, that was his huge thing when he was on here, was just talking about, even when he had gone out with a rep, but even himself, was his self-talk, which obviously originates, Brian Tracy, psychology of selling, is what and Casey said it in a way, and Bodie said it in a way, what you tell yourself in between the doors is who you become. And so, if the doors are the entryway for us for the rest, I mean, Bodie really harped on that, dude, and it changed my paradigm about the entire situation. What we tell ourselves is just who we become. And then that just the aspect of staying present, right? And I had that experience because Lee for a long time would just pound me out, like, dude, you're not, he would say it not kindly, but all I heard is just, you suck. And I'm always thinking like, man, because I'm like I was very successful in life. Like I did very well in school, like I didn't finish college, but post-college, like I did very well. I made really good money. Everything I ever wanted to do, I was able to do. And so when I got here, like I didn't, my work ethic was just a little different. It just was like, and Lee would just, I've always been able, like what you said in a way is like, I'm always able to figure it out. Like I can, maybe if I read something, or if I'm taking in some stuff or whatever, But he was like, nah, man, it's just more doors here. Like, it's just, if you're only going to get it if you knock more doors. Right. And so when you had this whole kind of, because I think we all go through it. There's a point in our career, if we don't quit, it might be in your first year, it might be in your fifth year. If you don't quit, you have that realization of like, I am who I say I'm going to be and who I need to be. So was that in Utah? Was this story in Utah before you went to Texas?
Yeah, I would say once I got that first sale, I kind of realized like, okay, I can do this. And I think you're right. Bodie, talked a lot about that, like telling yourself who you are, in between doors and what you want to be. That was big for me. But yeah, I would say that Utah was only a few days here and there, and I honestly think we still bageled. I don't even know if I sold one in Utah before I headed out to Texas, to be honest. Like, I sold those 3 accounts in Arizona, and I was like, all right, I'm ready. And so I don't like the realization of me being able to overcome and do things, and figure it out. I actually feel like that was more of a mentality that kind of grew as I grew in the door-to-door world. I would definitely say I mentally didn't understand where I could get to my very first year. I remember our very first week in Texas, I ended up selling 12. And I went home to my wife and I'm like, I don't know how I could physically sell any more than 12. I worked every hour. I did everything I possibly could. And then the next week I do 19, and then the next week I do 20. And I'm like, I always keep like looking back at it, and I'm like, mentally, it was always just the next sale for me. It didn't matter what the number was. It was just the next sale. Just get to the next sale. Whatever I need to do to get one more. And that was my mentality that I grew into. And it over time, yeah, I would say I've now developed a very keen skill for telling myself, I can work my way through this. If I don't understand it now, I can work my way through it. And mentally, I can overcome whatever I need to be successful.
Boom. So, wow. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, you sold 115 in May. So obviously 12 in a week was about a third of what you could probably have done. Right.
Yeah.
And then that summer, you go on to do 315, not including preseason, because obviously you did a little bit of the preseason, right? So when you accomplished it, so during this time, in the first summer, where's your mindset at? Like, do you have like rituals in the morning? Are you reading? Kind of what are you doing every day? What time are you going out? Like, kind of give us an idea of like, what's going on?
Yeah, this is actually really funny. So number one, I did not read my agreement. And my whole thing was, Bodie, as soon as I sell 175, I'm out of here. Like, I'm going back home. I knew exactly the number I wanted to hit. I like put it up everywhere. My wife knew it. I knew it. We knew exactly what number we wanted so I could go home. And so in the mornings, I'm not a regimented person per se. I don't love, like, Reno sleeps with the socks on, eats the same cereal. Like, that dude has it down to a science. I'm not that guy. So I worked out in the morning, hung out with my wife. We had one little boy at the time, and I just, we would go out at normal times. I mean, we had meeting at 12 and then we were out on the doors at 1:30. The big thing for me in season 1, in my very first season, was Mondays. Bodie taught me a lot about Mondays. You got to have big Mondays. They set up your week. And so Mondays and Saturdays have always been a staple of like my big summers. I have big Mondays and I have big Saturdays, and the rest of the week just kind of falls in place. If you can get out a little early on Monday, get that first sale under your belt, it just kind of relaxes you for the week. You're like, all right, I can do this again, because there's something to be said about taking Sunday off and then that anxiety of, where the heck am I going to find 30 more sales this week? And so getting that first one out of the way on Monday, maybe a little early, that was always a staple for us, is getting our guys out early on Mondays to get rolling. And then Saturdays are your staple to the week. that's when you really, really, go gangbusters.
Yeah, that's my experience. I've been recently talking about it because it just happened. I had a personal goal, which was to do 5 solar deals in a week, and I did it first week of May. And it was because the week started off well. Because I've had that experience. I'm not like I'm not like a lot of guys. Like I didn't knock doors in the very beginning like all the time like I should. And then the more that I have actually, because we have a setter closer model, and the more that I've actually done my own personals, like you can just see how, especially in the beginning of the week, because if I get to Thursday and I haven't sold anything, like I know, well, I'm not going to get any draws for next Friday if I don't sell anything. And if I'm just starting to get rolling Thursday, that means I'm only setting appointments for Friday, Saturday. And now I got to set enough appointments. And yeah, so you put words exactly to, so you're knocking for 6 days. Which is literally what Lee and I had decided even for myself. Because I was, I had no clue what was going on when I started doing solar, especially in Vegas. I was like, whoa, because the South, you can just leisurely walk around in Charleston and just say, hey, you need a roof? Like, hey, and they're like, yeah, come on in, let's sit down and talk. But out here that like they yell at you, they literally yell at you, which is hilarious to me because whatever. But Lee and I had discussed like, would you want your door knocked on Sunday? And I'm like, no. And he's like, so then let's not knock, I'm not going to, maybe we don't do Sundays. So yeah, 6 days a week. So then you end the summer, so you quit, but you don't quit, right? You do.
Yeah. So I called Bodie at like, I don't know, first part of July. I'm like, hey, hit 175. We're just going to pack up and head home. He's like, what the heck are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I hit my goal. He's like, I don't know what is going on right now, but if you leave, you don't leave. Like you don't get anything. You have to stay the summer. I'm like, Bodie, what are you talking about? He's like, did you not read your agreement? So that was the first time me and Bodie had a little bit of a butt heads moment. Like, hey, what the freak, man? But it ended up being really good. I ended up staying. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll stay. And then I just reeled off another, 125 plus jobs, and it ended up paying us really well and ended up setting us up for management year 2. But yeah, it was kind of funny because as the summer progressed, I just kept getting closer and closer to that 175. And then I thought I could just be done. I thought it was like, that's how it worked. But back then, that's not how it worked. And we were making like crazy low money per sale. That was the other thing. I mean, I think we got like a couple $100 up front per sale. And it was a different time then. So I'm grateful for it. Guys reeling off 5-10 grand on a solar deal. I mean, that's what ended up pushing me into solar, obviously. That and referrals. So obviously after my Vivint career, I went and went over to SolarCity and rode the SolarCity Tesla wave. And then was, the latter half of my door-to-door career was built on solar. And that was for the last 4 years until Sunrun just recently sold to, or Vivint Solar sold to Sunrun, and I exited on that transaction.
Nice. And I'm definitely going to harp on that. Let me get into the record-breaking summer. So you then come back year 2, you're managing at that time, and you do 408. So where did you do it? B, what was your mentality going into that year? And then C, what was it like to do that much and also manage people at the same time?
So actually, a little bit of a correction. Year 2, I did 300. Year 3, I did 300. Year 4, I did 300.
10-4.
Plus, they were all within that. And it was actually year 5 is when I broke the all-time record. So
good. Okay.
We show up to Wyoming. It was my very first year in Wyoming. Bodie said, hey, you need to go to this market. It fits your personality. I've been Alabama, Alaska. I've been Chicago. We'd been in Georgia. So I'd kind of sold all over. And so we show up to Alaska or to Wyoming. And my first week, like I was used to then selling 20 plus and managing and doing everything at the same time at that point. Like we were already managing 3,000 plus account offices. And wow. Wyoming was an interesting because we couldn't even have all of our office. We had 50 guys. We had to break them up because the towns were so small. We would blow through the area so fast. So we had 2 different offices of 20, 25 guys. Reno would run one and I would run one. And so I sold 11 my first week and called Bodie. I'm like, this place sucks. I'm like, I can't even believe you would say that this would be my spot. He's like, give it some time. And all of a sudden it was 25 plus for the next 17 weeks and 30 plus a lot of weeks. And it was very high end, like really educated people, big houses. Like it wasn't your run of the mill type, that guys look for in alarms. And that was just me as a salesman. I really liked selling to educated people. I liked selling to high class people that were, really, really educated. And so long story short, that summer was just, I've never been more focused on just the next day, the next sale, like just so intensely focused on. And I didn't even know I was going to break the record. Of course, I didn't even think about, I just knew that I had hit my stride in sales.
Yeah.
I knew the product. I knew the demographic. I knew the objections. I knew how to foresee objections coming and overcome them. You always talk about good salesmen walk out of deals and first years are always like, well, that was a lay down. Well, you didn't notice that I knocked down 6 objections before the customer could ever bring them up. And it seamlessly transitioned. I just felt like I had really hit my stride in sales. And that's when that all came together that year. It was just the perfect storm. My work ethic was through the roof. I was actually usually out on the doors early and trying to get one, and then coming back to the office to do correlation. And that was mainly because I sold with somebody every day of the year that year. One of my guys was with me on almost every, if not every sale that year. I basically would walk through the office, all 25 guys would knock with me a day, and then I'd re-round and do it again, re-round and do it again. And we produced more 200 plus account reps that year than any other year. It was awesome.
That's sick. How long were you in Wyoming? Was it just the summer or did you do a year there?
18 months or 18
weeks. Yeah, that 18 weeks is there.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on a couple of things as I'm taking notes here. So Casey, says it all the time, don't underestimate what you can do in 5 years and overestimate what you can do in 1 year. And then, I talk to you and I see like what you were able to do in 5. I mean, what you did your first year is badass, but what you were able to do in your first year, what you were able to do in 5. And then Kenny, we just had Kenny Cox on episode to be out this Wednesday. Like, he at 5 years had a completely paradigm shift because he didn't want it. He was like over it. He's like, I hate this, whatever. And then kind of even Lee, like seeing what these guys were able to really do in that 5-year span is pretty miraculous. Casey said it perfectly, like you can get a guy that has good work ethic, and then you get a guy that goes from good work ethic to a little bit of knowledge, and then you get a guy that's just refined. So he's got perfect work ethic. His knowledge is where it needs to be. He's just a master of his craft. Yeah. And the doors just become they all become a lay down, right? Because it's like you're just crushing the door.
Yeah, it is. And I would say that was my year 5. I had sold enough. They talk about the outliers and the 10,000 hours, and I don't know if I need to add it up or not, but I feel like that really like rang true with me in that year. It just felt like I hit my 10,000 hours and it was gangbusters. It was on. And me and Reno were 1 and 2 that entire year, back and forth. And then I just kept going. Like I just kind of kept, so he ended up selling 355 and I sold 409 in that year. And he was second. And it just, I would say both of us just kind of hit a stride and pushed each other. I really attribute a lot of my success to having him right there, because having that other guy there always pushing you and always like, how many is he going to get today is a big deal.
Yeah, friendly competition. There's a book Now You Know by Ryan Chamberlain. I read it a few months ago, and he says 200 deals in the house. So, I don't know which formula it is, if it's 10,000 hours or 200 houses or whatever. I do want to kind of talk about Reno here. So, what was kind of his role in the management team with you guys? Because it seems like a lot of the most successful regions, especially your guys' that region's probably the greatest door-to-door region to ever do it, period. I mean, that's just a fact. So kind of what was Reno's with you and his management style, and kind of how did you guys work so well together?
Well, we've been best friends since we were 7. Never been in a disagreement. So that was kind of like leading into this, like, probably one huge thing. We are really kind of opposites that attracted to be best friends. I'm a big time hunter. He doesn't hunt. Like, he's a California kid. I'm, born and raised in Utah. Like, there's just a little bit, just enough different in us that makes us really good together. Reno's mentality is that laid back, you're going to be fine. Everything's fine. Just work hard. And, that was his mentality. Mine was more like, it was kind of like good cop, bad cop. I was kind of the bad cop of the office. Like, hey, we need to get this done, this now. And we just really worked well together. When there were certain things that Reno had to take care of that he was better at, we relied on him. And the same thing for me. If it was more a logistical thing, licensing, that type of stuff, that was kind of my role. Reno was just a really good leader of men. He could stand up there. He could command respect with just his work ethic and how he, carried himself. And so both of us were just, and us selling that. How do you not sit in an office and be inspired by your two leaders that are not only leading your office, not only, doing it the right way? That was a big deal with us, with integrity and honesty and making sure that guys realize that you can sell big numbers and not lie. That's a big deal. And then leading the company in sales 1 and 2, it was inspiring for our guys. I think that they saw, they really got to just kind of sit back and be like, man, this is cool to watch these two go at it and be such good friends, but yet such, competitors.
Yeah, that's badass. So especially with going forward for you guys, man. So you guys end this record-breaking year together. You leave Wyoming, you go back home, and kind of what's your mindset here? Like, what was your guys' goal kind of going forward, and what were you guys really focused on for the next year?
Actually, that was the last year we sold together. Reno ended up transitioning into solar. I ended up, and it ended up actually, when you have a security blanket like that leave, it almost like kind of breaks that comfort bubble again. And, I talk a lot about that comfort bubble getting broke time and time again, and to a point where it should never even exist. In any situation, whether you're on your own or whether you're in a team setting, this industry teaches you to be a team player, to do it individually, to do everything. Like, you have to be a very versatile player in this space to be successful. You have to be able to go out on your own when nobody's watching and produce. You also have to be able to support your teammates when they do good and you don't. So it actually is a very dynamic industry that way. And what happened was, when Reno went into solar, it kind of left me this gasp of like, oh my gosh, my wingman is gone. But what it did is it forced me, and I remember having a conversation with Bodie and Casey, and both of them said, Troy, I promise you this will be the greatest thing for you individually. You're going to grow into leadership things that maybe Reno handled that were your weaknesses will now become your strengths. That's just the way you are. You're going to round out as a leader. And it ended up 3 more years in Wyoming. I built a massive region out of that small little state by this incubator of leaders. And I had a huge mentality shift that year that I was just going to breed leaders. Like, that was my goal. I was going to take a step back on my personal sales, and I was going to really put an emphasis on getting leadership and promoting other guys. And so my whole mentality of recruiting changed. Everything changed. It wasn't a rep in my office anymore. Like, hey, come be a rep in an office where the managers sell 400 accounts. It was, you're going to be with me for 1 year. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know, and you're going to be a leader year 2. You better get ready for it. You better prepare for it, because that's the best move for you, and that's the best move for me. And all of a sudden we were spinning out 2 to 3 leaders a year that did their own offices, where we had kind of kept it. There were years where we kept the same 50 guys. We didn't even recruit a new guy because our office was so strong. We loved everybody in it. We were so, united, but that wasn't the best thing for us in our growth. That was just the best thing for us to have a cool group of guys to go out. And that was where the mentality really changed for me. And I think my leadership skills really developed over the next 3 years of being able to inspire guys to not only go and do great their first year, but lead and manage and go on to manage regions themselves.
So why did your mentality change to that? Was it because of Bodie and Casey's kind of leadership? Like, why did you take that stance for the next 3 years of like, I want to create these leaders? I mean, was it Sarah? I mean, like, where did that come from?
Well, I think it kind of it's that, again, going back to like my life and looking at it, it's like, I got to give this up to go to here. Yeah. And I had to give real estate up, a good job, to go to another, a great job. And I had a very good spot in managing these guys, but I wanted to be great and I wanted to be the next level. And so I had to give up a little bit and I had to have a mentality shift. I guess when me and Reno were together, it kind of, we both couldn't become regionals at the same time. We both we knew that we were just, we were just kind of in our roles. And when Reno left, it just kind of dawned on me, I guess, hey, if I'm either going to fizzle out or I'm going to excel. Like, there's no middle ground in door to door. There really isn't. Right. You're either growing or you're dying.
Yeah.
Like, you're either growing or you're shrinking. Like, that is the way that the door to door world is. And it brings out guys that are going, and you see it all the time in the industry. You see guys fizzle, and they're gone. And then you see the guys that are like, roll up their sleeves and go and get it done. There were plenty of guys that started the year I did and Casey did. And I mean, Casey grew even bigger than I did. Like, there were lots of guys that never even made management roles or even could manage teams that started that same year as us. And it's just that mentality of, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to push past this and I'm going to get to another level. Like, I need to hit another level in my career because right now I'm just comfortable.
So you do this for 3 more years. So is that 8 years? That's 8 years for alarms. And then I've got you plugged at 34 at this time. Is that kind of your last year? You 34?
33, 34 sounds about right. I was like 26, so 34. We went from, 1 kid to 4. My wife was living in hotels for 16 weeks a year in multiple hotels. It was a huge sacrifice for my family to go out to Wyoming every year. And my last year regionally managing, I was in a new zip code every week of 18 weeks of the summer. And it was Hawaii, it was Mississippi. I mean, I had teams all over. And my wife would come in for 6 weeks and hang out. I mean, it was just, we had kids. My little boy was what was he then? 7 or 8 by then, and had grown up having his summers in a hotel. Like, it was a huge sacrifice, and it just came to a point where I needed a little bit more stability for my family, and I needed to be able to be more of a dad, and a father figure. And my little boy never even played Little League. I needed him to have those experiences, and so it was a transition that had to happen for more of my family life. And one that I consciously made the effort. Like, I sought out SolarCity and went to them and said, hey, this is what I've done. This is what I have. This is what I can do. But I need to be more home based, and I'm fine to travel from my home, but I need to be more home based. I can't drag my family out. My wife is unbelievable. I mean, fixing dinners and skillets and crock pots nonstop for 18 weeks in a travel lodge or a Hilton. Sometimes when we got really nice accommodations, it was like, they weren't the greatest in Wyoming, you can guess, but
I want to touch on that before we get into the SolarCity deal. I've got it written down here in big letters circled that, break the comfort bubble, break the comfort, stop being uncomfortable. And I've got a mentor in my life who always says, you can always tell a man's trust in a power by if you change up his routine in any way. He's like, why don't you change up your routine a little bit and see if you have some kind of guidance, right? And see where you're at when that happens. And you also, you say it a bunch of just like, we're going to give it everything. I'm going to give it everything I have to move forward. I'm going to get up everything to go forward. And it's pretty incredible when you're talking about your wife, literally giving up everything every summer to come with you and literally breaking her comfort bubble to come with you. So I really want to touch on that of like, what was that like for you guys? Like what obviously it made your bond stronger. So kind of what was that like for you guys growing up that way?
It was funny. It got like our very first summer when we had our little boy, it was like a dream summer. We were in apartments, and the first summers were more apartment based. But when we decided to go to Wyoming, you just couldn't be in apartments. You couldn't stay in an area. Cheyenne was 195,000 people. I mean, you could barely get like a month out of there. So going in there, we consciously knew that was the situation, and my wife just signed up for it. I mean, it wasn't a matter of, her griping or worry. Like, she saw my drive, she knew what I had and how hard I worked. And I think that kind of eased her pain of, we're not going to go out here and spin our wheels. Troy is going to take care of us, and this is the way he's taking care of us. And she's always been that way. But as we got more kids, it was like every summer we'd show up with another kid. It was just like, even the same hotels would be like, hey, Troy, welcome back. You got another kid. Like, it was just like every summer, because we went to Wyoming for 3 years. And I transitioned out on my 4th year in Wyoming. But yeah, like every year we just showed up, and my wife she just did it. I mean, it was amazing. I look back at that, and like I said, I mean, we didn't have kitchens in a lot of the hotel rooms. She had to figure out ways to entertain our kids, entertain the other wives. Like, that was kind of her job was, thinking of ways to help the other wives to cope with the summer and their husbands being out. And I think that was a huge benefit of having her out there as kind of a figure that the wives could look at and say, this is how we do it. It's okay. We're gonna do some fun activities. We're gonna make Burke brags. We're gonna do that. Like, she just figured out things, to do that would help the other wives get through the summer as well. And we always talked about it, like, the more that the husbands were happy and the wives were happy, the more the husband would produce. And we would actually talk about that openly in our recruiting, like, hey, you're just as important. And that was a big emphasis in my offices, were the wives, and making sure that they were recognized for the work that they did, because that was a big important part of a happy salesman, having dinner, having clean clothes, just the things that like you don't think about. But if you can eliminate those little stress points for a salesman, and he already has his shirt ready to go, he has things ready, his lunch packed, those are small things, but they are huge wins in the grand scheme. Keeping I always called it keeping your athlete well-oiled, like making your rep, your husband, he is your athlete. We need to keep him on the field, ready to go as much as possible.
Yeah, that's really powerful, man. That's really powerful. There's a lot of talk going on around too, like on Instagram and stuff. And, a lot of guys are posting these memes that are saying, like your habits are what define you later in life. Like it's not what you're doing at work, it's what you're doing at home. And, a lot of time. Yeah. And that's pretty powerful, man. I'm going to take that and use it more often, because I think like, I've always had a supportive girlfriend, and like, we're not married yet, but she's always been super supportive of this stuff. So I love it when I hear guys, like Lee and you and everybody else, basically it's on this podcast, of, the long-term development is who am I going to surround myself with, but not just like my, immediate 5 people or my mastermind group of like my home value. Like, I got to be on top of that, man, because if we're not getting to, you're right, man. I even said that to Lee one time recently. It's so funny. I'm 31 saying this to a grown man. I'm like, it's funny, bro, because when I'm out knocking, it's like it's my job, right? And if I had a regular job, as Bodie would say, just over broke, a regular job, I would be at a desk or doing something where I couldn't be on my phone or talking to people or, and I didn't listen. Troy, when I started this podcast, I didn't know what Vivint was. I literally had never even heard of Vivint. I didn't know who they were. I didn't really care. I'm like, yeah, okay, some smart home company. I can hang cameras myself, is what I was saying, is what I would say and then obviously my mind was blown and it's grown into a respect level of servitude. But Lee would say, yeah, it's different when you're on a blitz, man, during the summer. Like you're there. And I didn't know what a blitz was. And he's like, you're literally out there, bro, with nowhere to go. You're not going home, right? Yeah. You have no activities. And so, yeah, that's pretty incredible, man, that experience.
Well, and I would add one other thing that was a real staple for us, and that was give your guys something other than just the sales skills to survive in the summer. We were really big on helping guys like get financially set, like setting a good example to not just go blow all the cash that you made in the summer, but actually like being smart and investing and just being frugal. You don't need to walk around with a Rolex to let people know that you make a lot of money. Like that was a big thing for our region and things that we taught regularly in meetings was, guys, we work hard, we make a lot of money, but we live, frugally so that this can set us up 5 years from now to do what we want to do. And that's honestly been the coolest part about door to door for me, is setting myself up to do passion projects and then incorporating the things I've learned from door to door in my passions. Oh, like that is, you want to talk about the perfect storm of selling 409, like you go put something that you're passionate about with the sales skills and the skills that you've learned in door to door, it's gonna get crazy.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I don't even need to segue because you do it yourself. I will say this though, it is funny. Lee and I will talk about this stuff a lot of like, well, how many did he do his first year? How many do his second year? And I've never sold an alarm. I might one day, you never know where this takes us, but I've never sold an alarm. So even Lee, like it was funny, his first week with Pat or whatever, like I begged him to come knock with me. I'm like, bro, I need to see you do it, because doing this in class is not working and I suck. Yeah. And he's like, oh, this is the first, and it's on my route. This is the first hood I knock with Pat. And I'm like, everything's great. But I will say it's really funny that all of you guys know to the number exactly how many alarms you sold, how many were funded. I mean, for your first 5 years, not one of you have guessed like, oh, I don't really know. No, I know to the number how many it was and how many it was funded. And it's pretty miraculous that it's like Lee said it perfectly. He said, you're earning your stripes, bro. It's like, you're earning your stripes to be able to do this.
Yeah. I mean, you bleed, you sweat, whatever, the blood, sweat, and tears that go into every cell. Of course, you're not going to forget that number. You might forget some of the faces along the way, but you definitely remember the number. And, it's just solar and alarms. Door to door in general is really difficult. I think alarms is a heightened emotion that you have to bring to the table to close those accounts. Solar is a less emotional purchase. And so there is something to be said. I've sold both of them and I can tell the difference between them. That being said, I wouldn't say that one is easier or harder than the other. It's door to door. You get rejected. You've got to overcome the fear of failure. The same principles are true in either of those realms. The world of alarm door to door back when solar wasn't around, in 2012, 2013, like solar wasn't a gig. So being the top salesman at Vivint, that meant something to people. I mean, you had some amazing guys that were fighting for that crown. You had Jordan Williams, Ty Williams, Trevor Frunk. I mean, some of the greatest of great in the industries that have made millions and millions of dollars and had awesome careers. Kenny Cox was like a huge rival of mine. We were in the same region. One of my best friends. I love Kenny, and we talk all the time. But that being said, like think about that. You're in this industry, and these titans are all around you, and that's why it brings the very best out. We had to sell 85 as an office installed to beat Trevor Frank's team in the cup. Like 85 installs in one day. I mean, it was crazy town. Like, I'm not talking like a week or anything. I'm talking 85 in one day. I had to sell 8, and Reno sold 8 to win. Like, we were installing deals long past midnight to win that matchup. Like, it was a different era. And I don't want to sound arrogant. I know what people do nowadays. It's incredible. But back in those days, it was like the last dance, I felt like we played a different way. It was the Knicks, it was the Bulls, it was Jordan, it was Isaiah Thomas. I mean, that's how I feel. And of course, I'm going to say that because I'm old and washed up and probably couldn't sell. But man, in my heyday, I was really good.
I love the confidence, man. There's a kid right now who he's partnered in what's called Knoxstar University with Danny Pesci Taylor, and I've been talking to him a lot, trying to get him on here. And I think in 2014 he was probably 12. I mean, the guy's not any older than I am, but he's got 13 years in the industry. He's been knocking since he was 18. That was the first job he ever had, and he's done it ever since. And he sent me a screenshot. I think it was like 51 solar deals in a month. He did 8 in a day one time, and I was just like, I'm like. I mean, for me to get 5 in a week, and I'm like, I'm average, like, I think I'm good, but I'm not, I don't have like a Troy or a Lee coming in behind me, like if I have a kid and I know, and like, I'm cool, man. It's my first year. Like, I'm loving every minute of it. But to get 5 in a week, I worked so hard. I was like, I need a break for a week. You know what I mean? I was like, whoa, and then it's funny because week 2, I'm like doing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing in the second week of May. We're in the third week of May. I'm doing the same thing, and I get 1, and it was a good, solar, you can get 1 and it can pay your bills for the next 3 months. But it was like, I was like, what, and so I respect, and I'm labeling it the golden era of Vivint. Or of door knocking. You guys, like, that's why, like, it was the minute Lee and I started doing this thing, I was like, I need all those guys. I need that region. I need every guy from that region. I need to talk to every single one of them. You guys had 40,000 people come through your organization, right? Like 40,000 lives, the ripple effect from those 40,000 to whoever they reach and the businesses they've gone on to create. And like, I think it's newsworthy. You know what I mean? I would agree with you guys. I'm looking at you guys as like, and I'm the lucky, I'm the luckiest because I get to share this with all the other people that are listening, because we're all getting the best of the best from you guys. And so we're just super appreciative as well. I do want to talk, I'm going to leave that note to talk about kind of adding the doors to your passions, but year 8, you make this conscious decision to go to SolarCity. What year was that? What was that like? And kind of, let's talk about that experience.
That was really, really difficult. You think about what you've put in for 8 years to walk away and to, again, you think about it, you're comfortable, you're making 600 plus, 700 plus some years, and to give that up. I remember driving out to Wyoming for my 4th year and thinking, I have personally sold like more than 1,000 customers in Wyoming. If all those guys would just give me a freaking referral, I'd never have to knock another door in my life. And that kept playing through my head. Like, am I just doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results? Like, what is going on? Like, and if you're at a certain level, I feel like, of success, you're constantly probing for what can I do better. I think a lot of people just settle into life and think, okay, I'm doing good. I think those exceptional people constantly probe, what am I doing good? What can I do better? And they are not afraid to give up success to get more success. They're not afraid. And I think that I'd hit that. And I go back to my door-to-door roots for that. I think in life, because I did door-to-door for so long, at the end of the day, I look at any obstacle, any job and say, well, I did door-to-door. Like, it can't be harder than door-to-door. Like, if I literally have to go door-to-door, I can do that. Like, it's the most guerrilla warfare type industry that just teaches you these grassroots. Like, there's nothing I don't feel like I can't work myself through. And so that success, that fear of failure kind of goes away. And that was kind of the mentality is I'm like, all right, solar might be the next wave. It might be the 7-figure and beyond world for me. And also it gave me that opportunity to be more of a dad and be more of a year-round type guy. And so making that call to Casey and to Bodie and exiting Vivint was really, really difficult. It was not taking any of your teams. I had 9 teams at the time. We were doing crazy accounts. The summer had just kicked off. I remember to the day, it was June 15th, when I finally sent my resignation in after meeting with Todd, after flying in and meeting with Alex, when meeting with Bodie and Casey. And I look back at that, and that was a really, really difficult time to exit. My little brother was managing. I mean, there was just a lot. There was a lot tying me there. But I knew that was the best move for me and my family, and I knew that I needed to pursue that. And so it wasn't I prayed about it type thing. It was, hey, this is the next thing for me. And if it's a bad decision, it's a bad decision. I'll live with my decision. But I feel like at this point in my life, I can make bad decisions good decisions by the actions that I carry out after the decision's made. There are good and bad decisions, mostly in investing, but in work, you can make a bad decision look really good by just having amazing work ethic and by figuring it out. And I think a lot of guys get worried about the decision itself. Like, oh, did I make the right decision? No, it's what you do after the decision is made that makes the decision good or bad. And going into SolarCity, I knew there was a lot of question marks. John Frampton, and that was a new industry. SolarCity was a very corporate style company that was getting into door-to-door. The solar industry was very new. There wasn't very many products out there to be had. I mean, we had, Lone Pile didn't exist, Summite didn't exist. Like it was, PPAs didn't really, they existed. We had a My Power agreement that totally blew up in our, it was a very, very rickety industry. Companies were BKing. That's when SunEdison went BK after they were trying to buy. I mean, guys, like, we can get into a few things. My equity was obviously gone. My investment that I did in the 313 was refunded back to me. And the day, literally probably 2 days after my decision to go to SolarCity, SunEdison announced that they were buying Vivint Solar, which would have returned guys I think it was 6 times the money they would have invested. I mean, it was like a multi-million-dollar loss I had 2 days after I decided to exit Vivint, is what in my, like on the outside. Now that in itself, that is a whole nother level of lesson learned. And I can kind of, if you want me to talk about that was a really important lesson in my life, that you cannot control the timing. You can control the decision and the time that you make it. But after that, that's what it is. And
wow,
if I would have let myself fester about the money that I would have lost over the next year and a half that deal drug out and ended up being zero. I mean, it ended up not even being a factor. I don't know if you know the story, but SunEdison ended up going BK and couldn't purchase Vivint Solar, and the whole deal fell apart.
Wow.
And in the moment, though, you think about that, you exit this company, you have all this, tied up in it. You leave that to go to a fresh new start company, and the 2 days after that, you find out you could have been bought out for multiple millions of dollars. That could destroy a person. That can destroy you really quick. And if I would have let that determine, holy cow, I missed out, and I didn't just put my head down and go to work, that could have really, really, really destroyed my career. And luckily, I was at a point where I just said, can't control it, can't do anything about it. I can only control what I can control, and I'm going to go be the very best VP of SolarCity I possibly can. And when I'm done, it will dwarf the money that I ever would have made with this SunEdison deal. And that's what I told myself. And it's what we tell ourselves is what we become, and that's what we became. And luckily, not luckily, a year and a half later, when the SunEdison deal kind of finally rolled out and nothing happened, I was so grateful that I had made that decision the very first day that came out.
Yeah, mad respect. It's like having diamond hands in crypto. A lot of us millennial kids know what it's like to miss out on a couple of dollars betting on crypto. So I get why it's a little bit different when you're talking about your livelihood, though. That's such a good nugget, man. What you do after the decision is what makes the decision, and you can't control the timing. So you go to be a VP at SolarCity. What year was that?
That was 2015 then? No, 16, 17, 2017, I think. Gosh, I don't even know now. I think
they were
it was 2016.
That was when they were huge out here, right? I mean, that's when they were huge out in Vegas. Was that 2016, 2017?
Yeah, huge. Vegas and California were the only two.
So
I was brought into really California.
So what was that like for you? So what did you take more, like, what was your role at SolarCity? Were were you knocking any more, kind of like what? I know that they had people knocking doors in the beginning, and then when Tesla bought them, and you can correct me on all this because I could be wrong. Tesla buys them. Yeah. Elon says we don't need salespeople, whatever. So kind of what was that experience like for you?
Taking the job, there was a gentleman named Hayes Barnard there that I really was inspired by. It was me swimming in a different pond. I networked enough, around the Vivint world that I had kind of grown into a lot of amazing networks, but I kind of needed to swim in a new pond. So that was the SolarCity gig. I got recruited really heavy to go to Vivint Solar, and at the end of the day, leaving Vivint, I always sum it up in this. If you want to be a head coach, you can't go to a team that has a really good head coach and being a really good assistant coach thinking you're going to get that head coach job when the head coach is your same age. And Ba and Bodie were my age. They weren't going anywhere, and they were the best in the business. And so being a head coach means I have to go to a new team. And that's really what it summed up to be. And it just happened to be that team also brought a new network that I was really excited to network with. You're talking Lyndon Rive, who's Elon's cousin. I got to meet him and Hayes Barnard. I mean, this was a Silicon Valley, big, giant, these guys were connected. And I thought that would be a huge benefit in my career and on my resume and, just building my business round, sense of what I wanted to become ultimately. And when I went in there, yeah, it was a little bit hostile. An alarm guy coming in as a VP over all these solar reps. It's like, this dude's never sold solar in his freaking life. Like, what the heck is going on? And it took a lot of, well, first off, my immediate business was, let me go sell 10. So I just immediately hit the doors and I went and sold 10. I remember knocking with a gentleman out in the Bay Area, and I'm like, let's go. And so we went and I sold that amount. And I think, like, being in that realm, I don't even think I shepherded them all the way through. I think I just sold them with guys, and I just gave them to them as kind of with the leadership to kind of, show them that I can hold my own and I can understand the industry. And, but it took me a while to win their affections. It took me a while of, like, really taking everything I'd learned and putting it into the leadership and developing those leaders. And once they saw that, that was a turning point in the SolarCity gig. I mean, that's when we exploded. I recruited Reno over, and he was one of the high directors of Vivint Solar. And if you remember, Reno coming and leaving Vivint Solar was pretty crushing to them. That was right at the tail end of the Sun Edison thing blowing up. Like there was, so now the dynamic duo was again back together with SolarCity, with Elon Musk's vision of Tesla and SolarCity being one company one day. And it was a pretty compelling offer for guys to come and join our team, and we grew really rapidly.
That's pretty amazing. Because I do like to touch on the fact that like it's a strong thing in the industry, which Lee's harped on me a lot. It's like you see a lot of guys like they leave a company and they take the whole organization with them and they cripple the company. And I'm just like, Vivint's kind of a blood in, blood out thing, man. You know what I mean? It just is. And people like to do that in this industry, so it's pretty gnarly. So the respect of like going to SolarCity and not taking anybody with you, and then how many years were you with SolarCity, and what was that kind of organization like? I mean, you said you did say it's a big move, and some of the mentorship that's available there and where their mindset was. Well, how many years and what was it like?
So I was there 2 years before the Tesla merger, and then about 8 months after the Tesla merger. One thing I learned really important, I think, as a door-to-door salesman is to work in a corporate environment. Again, you just add these arrows to your quiver. Like, it's just like you become, and if you can add these things, like the salesmanship and the work ethic are your basic fundamentals. And then you add this corporate world of, hey, I need to make these people feel special to get what I need done in the corporate setting. And that's SolarCity taught me how to work in a corporate environment, where I needed to talk, communicate, actually read an email, actually how to respond to an email, how to respond actually with punctuation in an email, not just get crap, like there was a lot of education that went on in the corporate world in SolarCity that I had to learn, and that rounded out a lot of kind of the business EQ that I've kind of been able to acquire, learning what business EQ was and how to command a room and make sure that you knew your facts, like presentations. You go into a presentation with Lyndon Rive about your quarterly numbers and you don't know them, you are going to get ripped. These guys know solar better than you know solar. So if you think you're going to fudge a number or this or that, that's not going to happen. So long story short, that was a huge turning point in my world, was being at SolarCity. And then the Tesla transition, that taught me that things can be taken away very quickly, and you are left with your skill set at the end of the day. And that's what happened. Elon comes in, we have some complaints, and next thing you know, the whole again, I mean, this is another crazy story. John Frampton and us had put together a package that we were getting on a call with Lyndon. We had recently been at his place in Tahoe, and he had committed, hey, we're going to double down on door-to-door. It's the cheapest route. It's the most successful. It's growing rapidly. We thought we were, I can share this in hindsight, but we thought we were getting on a call with Lyndon that we were going to be getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million a year and an $8 million exit in Tesla stock. And in that same call, we actually got let go. So can you imagine?
Wait, what?
Yeah. So we had built up a whole package. We had said, this is for the VP all the way down director. This is the stock. This is the guarantees. This is the megawatts that we'll produce. And we literally got on the call thinking we were going to solidify this incredible $8+ million 5-year guarantee. And he says, you have 30 days and you are done. So.
Wow. Why? They got rid of door to door. I mean, all in one
They
swoop.
did it door to
Elon's.
door. Yeah, Elon. When Lyndon went in to present that idea to Elon, apparently some bad practices had bubbled up. Actually, funny thing in South Carolina, and long story short, Elon's like, we had this AG write us that basically said, if these practices continue, Tesla will no longer be allowed to do business in South Carolina. He's like, you freaking can every single one of these guys right now. So that was delivered to us. It was crazy. Calling my wife and saying, yeah, we didn't get the deal. We actually got let go. It was an interesting, again, I mean, my career is full of them. And it's just, it is what you are what you are after the decision or after this happens. You make your own luck. And at the end of the day, I flew out to you, I flew out there, talked to Lyndon. They wanted to keep us as some of the car, like managing some of the car dealerships and whatnot. And that didn't fit me. And so ultimately I went and interviewed with 16 different solar companies, and for my people, and not all of them, it wasn't the most popular decision. Not all of them ended up coming right off the bat, but I decided to go to Vivint Solar. They were going to have a landing place for everybody who could come over. They were going to pay checks. They were going to help out. And what unfolded next is probably an anomaly in the industry that will never repeat itself. But there was a crazy bidding war between Todd Peterson and Vivint Solar, to the tune of millions and millions and millions of dollars getting paid out for reps to just go to one of those two companies. I mean, it was, if you have not heard about this time in the industry, it was the most insane amount of money given for signing bonuses, guys going to companies. I'm talking individual reps getting a couple $100,000 signing bonuses. I mean, if you were at SolarCity, you were getting offers from both companies, Vivint Solar, and they were bidding each other up. It was crazy. It was really crazy.
That's insane. That's pretty incredible. So how long ago was that?
That was 2018, I want to say. 2018 was that year. Like, we got let go like that beginning of 2018-ish, I think.
So then what's kind of, where are you at now, and kind of what's your kind of plan going forward?
So I ended up landing at Vivint Solar. They ended up starting a dealer program themselves. I ended up building that from ground zero up to doing just shy about 5 megs a month in the solar dealer world. I got into a really cool job where I was recruiting CEOs of companies and talking to CEOs rather than individual reps. It suited me really well. Long story short, once the Vivint Solar Sunrun deal took place, I exited and started 3 different companies that I'm super passionate about. So 2 of them are auction-based companies in the horse world and in the hunting world. If you know me, you know my background is hunting and horses. And so I have, looked at both industries. I feel like they're a little archaic in the technology used to purchase hunts or to purchase horses. And so we have updated that into an app to where guys can go and bid on horses live at auctions, right on the app, or hunts right on. And actually, it's funny you say that. Kenny just bid on one of our hunts the other night on our app and texted me. He's like, your freaking app is dope. So
Sick.
We have guns, hunts that get auctioned off right through our app. And then one thing that I'm really excited about is we started a new hunting competition called Huntwarz. And we've taken a lot of the same skills that we, in the door-to-door, but we've applied it to the hunting world. So we take teams of 2. They don't know where they're going. We drop them in an area, and then we video them competing against another team in that same area to see who can take the most mature, largest animal, either with archery or a rifle. We dictate what the weapon is. We level the playing field, and they got 7 days in a new area to go and be successful. So Huntwarz is, I directed that first season, and we've now struck a deal with Leopold and some of the big hunting companies to back that. And we're on to season 2. So season 2 will bring 12 teams out, and we'll have teams all over the country competing in hunting competitions.
Where can you watch it at, Huntwarz?
Huntwarz is on our YouTube channel. It's also on Amazon Prime, and it's also on Carbon TV.
Sick. I'm watching it.
So it's everyday hunters that get randomly drawn, and then we push them out. They again, like I said, they don't know where they're going. They show up, they get 1 day of scouting, and then the competition starts. And
so rad.
Our videographers follow them around for the week, and these guys, it's really cool because it shows you what it takes to be successful in the hunting world. And so it's kind of a lot of the same things that I've developed in the door-to-door realm. If you looked at our companies, you looked at Gold Buckle Horse Sale, you looked at Hunt and Fish Connection, and you look at Huntwarz, you will see so many things that are so similar to the door-to-door world that we did, that were successful in the door-to-door world, that are absolutely smashing it in the
Love it. So rad.
Troy, I just want to jump in for a second here at the end. What I have just an immense amount of gratitude for is Vivint and the people that have come out of Vivint. It's this breeding grounds of humans, and I hear a lot of this in your story, and who you became during that time. You have these people who at some point find a way to burn the boat, and they just commit. It was really cool to hear your story of just burning the real estate boat and going in and committing and failing for that month, and then just finding a way to make it happen, and being surrounded. To me, it's just like a story of the Wild West, right? Of you and Casey on a mattress in a park, just trying to, Bodie driving around in cars. But the way that everything evolved, and the humans that have been produced from that, and the ripple effects, for me, when I was in transportation for 10 years selling corporate contracts, getting into door-to-door was just it's a completely different world, and the businesses run completely different. And who all of you and all of these other guys evolved into, with the character and how they develop other people. And it's really this industry of leadership through servitude, right? Where you say, hey, I've developed these skills, and I'm going to give them to you, and I'm going to serve you, where our reps become our customers. And by teaching them how to fish better and better, there's just massive compound effect of human growth and the whole person paradigm, right? The spiritual, the emotional, the physical, the mental, the financial, all of these things that go into making a really great person. So it's just been cool to hear your story, because you've been in the game for so long, and just what it's brought you. And, it really became the train to get you to where you are now, the mechanisms, right? The funnel to where you are now, and how to run a business and how to perpetuate, and the financials that came through that, and the leadership and the business IQ and all the things that you talked about. I just love the story. And these are the things that I think really that people need to hear, the drive and the ambition. And this is what Casey said, the doors are an equal opportunity employer. It's pull your boots up, square your shoulders up. It doesn't matter if you're white or black or Asian or Spanish or old or young. The door treats every man and woman the same. It's how you respond to the doors and who you are when you get there. And you see the successful people, it's the people who are willing to do the hard things continuously, and they just don't quit. So I just wanted to give a great shout of gratitude and give you some of my takeaways from your story. I thought it was great. It was really good to hear you. When Bo was on, and he was like, I had this kid Troy in my office, and he sold 409. I was like, holy mackerel. I mean, I've heard about you through my time in times in Vivint, But that story was, I latched onto that, and I'm like, we gotta get Troy on and hear this story. So it's been great, man, and I appreciate it.
Well, you're exactly right. As much as I had such great satisfaction breaking records personally, the impact that you have in people's lives is far greater of an accomplishment, and watching people grow. And, looking back and seeing some of the guys that we worked with way back in the beginning being super successful in different industries is way more satisfying. And if we could just say I played a small part in that, big or small, like that is what this is all about. And I 100% agree. When you look from the outside in, especially a Casey, because I know Casey's story, and he was on the brink of losing everything at one point, like with that whole company going under. You listen to these stories and it's not all like rainbows and sunshine. I mean, how many different twists and turns and almost and could have beens and holy cow, that's one thing you're going to notice with a lot of these, I would say a lot of us that kind of came up through the industry is the resiliency. And you're talking about walking into a meeting, losing, or feeling like you lost $8 million or losing $2 million a bit. Like that's life-changing money for a lot of people. And that's crippling. And I would say like the biggest thing is you look from the outside in, you're like, wow, that guy had it, made in the shade. And like, it's come easy for him. But if you really look behind that and you see all the different twists and turns and things that didn't go our way, that we worked our way through, that's where you kind of see the individual for what they are. And that's what I feel like door to door has taught me more than anything is whatever is dealt, you can find a way to overcome it, strap on your boots, square your shoulders, and take that next step. Like that's really what the doors have taught me is that is the essence of this life, not just making money. That's in every aspect of your life.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that, man. That's like the perfect way to end this. Yeah, man, I appreciate your time. Hopefully one day we can get you in person down here and talk again about some other stuff, the nitty gritty of it. But I appreciate you carving out some time for us and hopping on here. And I know everyone that hears this is going to be inspired, man. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. I mean, what you're doing is awesome. Congrats on your success. Congrats on everything you guys are doing down there. I will for sure come down and see you guys.
That'd be cool, man. Thank you.